Hey, kia ora, Markie here, and with the usual shaky camera. If you're wondering why there's a shaky camera, that's explained in other videos, and it's part of why this channel is lacking in style but full of charm and uniqueness. So I want to demystify the Bible, and I want to do it in a really short time. Can I do it? Let's see. Right, the Bible. What does the Bible mean? So I'm talking about the Christian Bible, or I should say the Christian Bibles, because there are different versions, and Bible just means book. Okay, so is it a book? Well, it is. Yes, it's a book. But when you say it's a book, people kind of tend to think that it, has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's all written by the same person at the same time, and all follows neatly. Whereas actually, it's not. It's an anthology, a compendium. It's a bunching together of a whole ton of different scriptures over a long time period. And I'm numerically dyslexic, so what I will do though is I will check the dates from Genesis, which is the first book of the Bible, to the book of Revelation, which is the last book of the Bible, and just give you a check on the dates. Now, some of the books were actually written a long time after events, sometimes over 100 years, after, so they're not necessarily first-hand accounts, but they may be based on some copied from some earlier version. Now, why have we got the books in the Bible that we've got? We've got the Old Testament and we've got the New Testament. Okay, so and that's really kind of simple, really, because the Old Testament is all pre-Jesus and the New Testament is all after Jesus, or contemporary with Jesus, telling the story of Jesus and the people that came immediately afterwards and started to form the early church. And what kind of why were the books included that were included? Well, that's the most interesting thing of all, really, is there are actually tons of scriptures contemporary with the ones that are in the Bible which didn't make it into the final edition. Okay. Why did the ones that made it into the Bible that we know today, why did they get there? Well, one kind of belief is that mainly it's because they were popular. They were well read by people. But the early church councils, thrashed all this out. And, we tend to think that, there was this kind of orthodoxy in the early church, and that things kind of continued in a nice straight line. But actually there were various different movements that kind of had radically different ideas about what Christianity was and about which books they wanted to include in the Bible. But the majority won out, essentially. So Christians would probably say that the books that are included in the modern day Bible are the ones that were inspired by God, and that God had a hand in making sure that the right ones were included. Okay. Likewise, Christians would say that the books of the Bible, though not written by God, God didn't kind of dictate them, were written by various people, some really quite interesting people, including a lot of what were known as prophets. So they're written by various kind of holy men at various different times. So it's a whole bunch of authors, and sometimes we don't know who the authors are for some of the books, even where there's a name. So, for example, the book of Revelation was written by John. Now, we don't know whether that was John the Apostle. So they talk about the 12 apostles, and St. John wrote, also known as Saints. St. John wrote St. John's Gospel, but we don't know that the John that wrote Revelation was the same John. So sometimes we think they're a kind of forgery. Sometimes it's very confused. There's things we know and there's things we don't know. And then the weird thing is, we're still finding scriptures, not new scriptures, but scriptures that haven't been found before are popping up, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, and every now and then an archaeologist finds fragments of, some scripture. So there were a whole bunch of scriptures that were read by the Jewish. So the Old Testament is stuff from is writings that were circulated and written and produced among the Jewish people. Not all of these writings made it into the Torah, which is effectively the Jewish Bible. And some of my understanding is that there are some that effectively. I'm kind of going to oversimplify this a little bit, but the Old Testament contains, I think it contains the whole Torah, but it may contain some of the Torah and a few other things as well. So I believe the Old Testament is longer than the Torah. If you know a bit more about this, then please correct me. So what's really interesting as well is that some of the books that are contained in the Bible that we know of today make references to books that aren't contained within the Bible that we see today. So there's one book in the New Testament which is Jude or Judah, and that was supposedly written or believed to be written by Jesus' brother, and I understand that that makes references to I think it's the book of Enoch. The book of Enoch's a really kind of sexy book. It talks about kind of Nephilim and things like that, which is kind of really kind of wow. But it's not in the Bible. So you've got Jesus' brother making references to stuff that's not in the Bible today. The other thing that's really interesting is the Bible cross-references itself a lot. So particularly the New Testament authors and John, whichever John it was that wrote Revelation, a lot of the imagery that they're using and the symbolism they're using, they're drawing on books from the Old Testament and from other scriptures. So it's very easy to miss that if you're just reading things in isolation. So for example, you know, I mean, I love all the kind of apocalyptic stuff and like the 666 on the forearm and on the hand. Well, actually, you know, we kind of tend to think that means barcode, the forehead or the wrist. We tend to think that that means some kind of barcoding is going to be imposed, and maybe it does, but actually that relates to a time when people wrote sacred words on their forehead and on their wrist, which was symbolic of, you know, pure thoughts and pure actions, as in the hand where you do that. So the Bible's an immensely complicated beast. Now, what I'm going to do, because this video is an introductory video, I don't, you know, some subjects which are my field of expertise I will go into lots of depth on, and some things which I have an interest in but not a great depth of expertise, I just want to give an introduction to. So it kind of that might satisfy you know, your thirst for knowledge on the subject. Might be more than enough, might give you indigestion, or it might just be a starting point. Now there's a fantastic YouTube channel that explains the Bible in great depth, and I think they're brilliant. Now they are coming from a Christian perspective, which I suppose, you know, is understandable when you're writing about the Bible, whereas when I talk about things I don't come from any kind of one perspective. I try and be as objective as I can. So but they're very upfront about that. Okay, so so if you have some difficulty with Christianity and you don't like the Christian interpretation of things, they are coming at this from quite an academic point of view, but they're also coming at it from a belief and faith point of view as well. So there is a bias there. But I think, you know, because they've owned that bias, that's absolutely fine. Okay, but it might not be for everyone. But it's a brilliant channel, so we'll put a link to that in there. The other thing I want to say is there are different kind of versions of the Bible, and the Catholic Bible is different to the Protestant Bible. So the Catholic Bible had a bunch of extra books, the deuterocanonical material, and that was taken out by some of the leading lights of the Reformation. If you want to know about the Reformation, I've done another video on the difference between Catholic and Protestant. So, so the Catholic Bible has actually got a few extra books in it. So you get more value, more value for your money if you're a Catholic and you buy the Catholic Bible. And also there were different translations of the Bible at different times, and so there were the people that did that, the scholars that did that, and the theologians that did that. Obviously they had their biases, and also they were basing their translations on, you know, the best of the knowledge that they had at the time. So if you read different versions of the Bible, they will kind of say different things, because, I mean, for example, quite often so the Bible's been translated from one language into another, and often a lot of the meanings have got kind of a little bit twisted along the way. So in a sense, that's the weird thing about history, is almost like the further away we get from an event, in some ways, the more clearly we can understand that event, which is kind of counterintuitive, really. So yeah, so I should say the Christian Bibles, if you like. And yeah, so I mean, there's so much to this subject. What should we say? We'll just leave you with one little bonus fact, that Mary in the Bible, she is talked about a lot in the Quran as well. It's just a little random bonus factor. I'll just throw this in for good measure because it's on my mind. And she's known as Miriam, so the Arabic translation is Miriam. And Miriam, or Mary, Mother Mary, is mentioned more times in the Quran than she is in the Christian Bible, Bibles. Okay, so a quick summary then, a cluster of books believed by Christians to be divinely inspired. We don't know who all the authors are, even where they're named. There's some ambiguity. Some things are written down a long time after the events, and there may be some forgeries in there, and there were a huge amount of scriptures that were excluded, even though the books that were included often make reference to them. So, and there's lots of different versions in the modern day, and it's being retranslated and rewritten all the time. So the Bible is kind of it's described as the living word. It very much is. So hope that was interesting. Rangimarie.